with some of them being STEM majors. We jumped from 0% applicants in 2022, I'm talking about women, to 30% in 24 of women applying for the internship, and we gladly accepted them to join our program. This year in 2024, we had 24 interns, and 8 were women, and just 1 was a STEM student. So things are improving, but we have a long way to go. Wall Street and banking, unfortunately, have a similar preconception that it's a man's world. So to have more diversity and a better internship program, I personally discussed with HR, asking them to reach out to universities and to post on social media to attract more women to our program, which in turn made the internship more diverse and overall a better experience. So I think the first message is that we need inclusion policies and action to come from the top. As managers of private companies, we still have a lot of work to do, addressing disparities in education, fighting the stereotypes, creating more opportunities and recognition for women in STEM. We must create inclusive environments, and women should occupy whatever seats they want to sit. CEOs, CFOs, any C-level, boardrooms, labs, research, Nobel laureates, and any role in any area. Our job at our companies is to create a conducive environment for that, motivate young girls, and expose them to subjects that were previously considered for men, hiring them and continuously stimulating women in science, engineering, technology, and math. We must have equal opportunities, equal pay, and reward merits over gender, and make sure to highlight role models and develop mentorship programs for the young generations to be able to put behind the stereotypes that women are not good with numbers, that they don't belong in science, or that they cannot handle leadership roles. We have men that are terrible with numbers and wonderful with arts, and we have the same and the opposite for any gender. Gender does not define your majors and your career. So we must work to give, since young age, the self-confidence to girls to go for STEM degrees and to believe they can do it. To make sure that they are exposed to that as much as the male students. I hope these wonderful panelists help us to put more light on this discussion and make us aware and ready to transform this issue into a non-issue and to be an obsolete discussion, allowing any person to pursue whatever career they feel they can thrive. Thank you very much. Eduarda is going to present all the panelists and I think initiate the panel.
Welcome everyone. I gotta say I'm very, very happy to be here. I think we've been planning for this event to happen for a while now, and it fills my heart with joy to see that there's this much interest. I think it's a testament to how much this topic is important for discussions in the private sector, but also in governments and civil society. It has to be present every day of our lives. I'm Eduarda Zogby, I'm with the Climate Investment Funds, but I have a story myself related to STEM. I was one of those many girls that didn't believe I could do an engineering degree because I thought it was too hard. I was told it was too hard and that I was not going to thrive because I was bad at math. But I was really good with physics and I never thought that I could pursue a career in this area. I wanted to thank United Airlines and also thank the Brazilian Chamber of Commerce because this event happened from a conversation and from their belief that this was an important topic. And nowadays, and we will get to that later, but United Airlines is a supporter of the Person of the Year Fellowship, which supported my studies. I did a STEM degree at Columbia University, I studied energy policy, and many others who are here were also benefited by this wonderful program that brings women to fulfill their dreams in their STEM careers. But overall, we have here some very exciting speakers that came to share their stories, their journeys, and what their organizations are doing to support women in STEM. So welcome everyone, and I'll get started inviting our incredible keynote speaker, Charlene Bodley. She's with the Bezos Earth Fund, and she's going to tell us more about her own journey and why this topic is so important for her. Thank you, Charlene.
Pleasant good afternoon to all. Thank you, Eduarda. It is such a pleasure to be here. I got on a train this morning from DC to come here, so that's testimony of how important this topic is for me. And it's always hard talking about yourself and your journey, but I will try to put it in. When I was approached to do this, I thought, how do I speak for an hour and a half and do so in 10 minutes? Because there's so much to say. Just as we were interacting before this session, someone pointed out the walls. So if you just look at the walls, both on this side or on that side, I think this is a photo of why we are here. This photo on this side, sorry maybe everyone cannot see, but it's the board of directors, and there are 0% women represented in that photo.
It's easy, my fault.
My hope, my dream is that these important conversations very soon will become obsolete. We will not have the need to have them. And I look around even at the room, and I'm pleased to see some men. Typically when I'm speaking about gender, I'm speaking to the choir, I'm singing to the choir, I'm speaking to a room full of women who understand what I'm saying. And I've increasingly found that men are appreciating these conversations, especially when men have daughters. And that's why I like to hit first, because men love their daughters to succeed. The truth is, the gaps exist, and although sometimes we go by emotion, and I say that because I've been on panels discussing gender, and I've had very senior men say, hold up, but we're talking about women and supporting women, but there are little boys on the streets with guns. Yes, that's true too, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a gap that does exist. And today I came with receipts. I love having receipts because numbers don't lie. And so it is true that women are underrepresented in the workforce across many sectors, spanning entire value chains. And when we think of STEM, this is particularly pronounced. Women make up a mere 29.2% of entry-level STEM workers, and of course that is reflective of what's happening at our educational institutions. Because if that number was different at the educational institution level, then entry into the workforce would not have been as dismal as 29.2%. Now let's put that into perspective. It means that 70% of your entry-level STEM workforce are men. And contrarily, in non-STEM occupations, that number looks completely different. Women's entry-level participation into the workforce is 55.6%. It means that there are more women in non-STEM careers entering the workforce than there are men. Now, when we think of career progression, we think of upward mobility, we think of rising, and we think of climbing the ladder. Unfortunately, with women in STEM, the phenomena is instead experiencing a drop to the top. What do I mean by that? The numbers become very dismal as we move from the classroom to the C-suite. And you mentioned the C-suite, and I was really happy to hear that, because part of the challenge is not having women in decision-making positions that can enable other women, the young women, girls, to be encouraged to have the confidence, because they don't see women leaders being successful in many areas. And so we face a leaky pipeline of women talent in STEM, in all areas, but particularly in STEM. Women in STEM account for only 12.4% of C-suite executives. Comparatively, in non-STEM careers, women make up 27.5% at the C-suite levels. Now that's still not ideal. Ideal is closer to 50-50. Don't exercise that same thing on dates. We don't go 50-50 on dates. We don't pay 50% of the bill. That's okay. Men and women are still not equal, but these are equal opportunity. Or we could chat about that over lunch. But it is certainly higher than what we're seeing for women in STEM at the C-suite level. And so we are faced with that leaky pipeline. And what it means is that girls and younger women don't have a role model effect. I am less likely to enter a field if I don't see women like myself being successful in that field. My background, I'm an engineer. I work in the energy sector, and I have experienced many young women leaving the sector. I have a personal friend who toiled and just did not have the opportunities to move forward, and instead she opened up a sweet and cake business. I'm sure she makes more money than me now, but we do need the talent. And we need the talent because the entire world is grappling with our greatest existential threat, and that is the climate crisis. Apart from that, many of our populations, particularly in the global south, and I am from a Caribbean island, of St. Lucia, and we face what we call polycrisis. So, one thing leads into another, and we're faced with several crises at one point. Universally, we are also chasing critical development goals. We certainly cannot solve these complex challenges without innovative solutions. And diversity breeds innovation. And so without all hands on deck, without diversity of opinions and approaches, we will not solve the world's biggest challenges at the pace necessary even for survival. You may ask, what is the selling point of orchestrating a gender balance in STEM careers? And there are several selling points, but the main ones for me is the power of diverse perspectives to fast-track sustainable development goals, to improve problem solving, to improve business operations and drive profits. Now, these last 2 points, I particularly like to mention them because I know money matters and numbers matter. The bottom line is important. And to companies trying to sell this need to diversify the workforce and to support women and to close the gender gap, I think it's always important to make that point that gender balance is really smart economics. Bottom line. Empowering women in STEM, empowering women, period, is a benefit to everyone. It's really everyone's business. And today, our topic relates to the private sector, and I wanted to, just for a little while, focus a bit on the business standpoint. And again, I brought receipts. Research supports the fact that women are essential to growth and should be regarded as a competitive advantage. Now, that statement for me sounds a little, women should be regarded as a competitive advantage. I say that though because it is typically seen as a nice to do. It is nice to encourage women, it's nice to make space for them at the table. But the point I really want to push today is that it is a business decision. And it does give a competitive advantage in anything that we do for the private sector, for government, for our development goals. And so a study covering 12 countries and 1,000 companies found that companies were 27% more likely to have superior value creation and 21% more likely to have above average profitability. So the profitability on the business side is actually tied into gender diversity. And it really is, it's not a matter of getting rid of the men. We can't do it without you, neither. It is just making space for women and diversifying our workforce. And as we think about the outlook of STEM, so we're speaking about today and the gaps that exist, but I always like to think forward. I work for the Bezos Fund, the Jeff Bezos, and this job has tweaks my mindset a bit, and I'm always thinking years ahead. Think of the Amazon giant. So I am challenged to think decades ahead. And so I felt that I needed to also bring that perspective today. We have a projected growth rate of STEM careers of 10.8%. That might seem small, but I think it's significant given that we already have such a huge gap. And if we don't get ahead of that, I think we would be doing an injustice to our future, the future that we want to leave behind for our kids and grandkids. The demand for skilled professionals in STEM is undeniable, and what it does is it gives us that opportunity to now rethink how we're going to close some of these skill gaps. Tap into our women. How do we, at the school level, encourage girls, young women, to get into careers that they think are too hard for them? Luckily for me, I grew up in a household where nothing was off limits. Throughout my career, though, I have had the unfortunate, eye-opening experience of meeting many girls who did not have the same privilege. They grew up in households where they were told, as a girl, you should become a lawyer, or you should, go down a different route, social sciences. But they don't come from households where the confidence lies that they can do anything, they can become an engineer. And then that carries on into the school life. You go to school, you go to universities, and you're told, you shouldn't, why are you in engineering? Look around the classroom, this is for us guys. And so we really need to change the status quo. Women bring different perspectives to STEM, and this is really how we should look at it. Not that we are just simply trying to empower women and simply trying to give them a piece of the pie, but appreciate that women bring different perspectives to STEM that can lead to new discoveries, that can lead to innovation. Empowering more women in STEM can help to break the cycle of poverty in underserved communities. And again, I stress, closing the gender gaps in STEM is everybody's business and therefore everybody's benefit. And so I've laid down all the problems, and I would hate to leave here without laying down some of the solutions. And how do we close these gaps? I think that's a very important thought to leave with you. I think first and foremost, I really typically like to advocate for an evidence-based approach. Data. Let us collect the data. Because a lot of this gender issue is based on our personal biases, our personal experiences, and our perspectives. But numbers, again, don't lie. So how do we foster an evidence-based approach? Secondly, as I've mentioned before, the role model effect, creating that role model effect by showcasing current female leaders, and that will play a pivotal role in supporting the next generation, in redefining the opportunities for women in STEM. Third, this point for me is quite interesting, and it relates to point number one, so this issue on data. A large portion of women's economic contributions, because of our traditional roles, are unmeasured, unpaid, and undervalued. Now what this means is that there is much less attention placed in technology development and investments to improve women's work. Because if it's undermeasured, if it's not measured, how do we correct it? And so I think, redefining women's economic contribution, be it from the household level, is important, that we can quantify that so that technological advancements can not only favor making men's work easier, but can also do the same for women. A typical one, and that one, I've managed a 600 member Women in Renewable Energy Network, and just about a year ago, we conducted a survey across the membership, and the number one need of these women happened to be training. But not just technical training, soft skills training. And that one is dear to my heart. 2 jobs back, I interviewed for a position, and I asked about the salary, and when I was told a number, I said, okay, thank you. 6 months into that job, the executive director jokingly said, well, you know, all the women I interviewed accepted the salary. All the men negotiated for more. What was I thinking? Why was it okay for me to not, you know, push the envelope? I promise you from that time forth, I will negotiate a higher salary, even though I think what's offered is great. It could be $10 I am negotiating. Just for the negotiating sake, right? And so soft skills is something that we take for granted, the difference, you know, how women approach these things with a different level of confidence. A woman will see a job application or vacancy, and if we do not tick 10 out of 10 of the requirements, we do not apply, or we're not comfortable applying. I promise you, and men in the room, feel free to agree with me. And even if you don't, we know the truth. A man will see a vacancy, a job advertisement, and he will tick comfortably one, but he will still apply, because in his mind, I will figure the rest out. And so we really need that, you know, level of soft skills training, and with that also comes mentoring, mentorship, and networking for women. I find that attending energy conferences, men are very comfortable with networking. It's simply a, you know, what do we do, which bar are we going to after the conference, and that's where the magic happens, that's what I'm told. That's where all the deals happen, over a glass of beer. And women, just putting yourself in that comfortable spot to even network after a conferencing event, that can be challenging. And so we need targeted efforts to allow women to network. Now, I've spoken a lot about the supply side, and I like to think of, you know, this workforce gap and women, that gender balance gap, as a supply and demand issue. So on one end, we have the supply of these amazing, capable women that bring something new and different to the table. And on the other side, we have the demand side, our industries, the private sector, you know, those that will be absorbing that talent. And we need to build supportive ecosystems. How will the private sector work with educational institutions to ensure that you have that cadre of female talent coming out of your universities and being absorbed? Because that's one of the fears of women. If I study this, you know, the jobs out there are industries confident enough that me as a woman engineer can do the job. And so we need to create very robust ecosystems where we can sing from the same song sheet. And lastly, our work cultures. And let's not take that for granted. And because I was asked to give some of my personal experiences, I have been on the side of being asked to take the notes, being asked to grab the coffee, say what? When I am in the room, sometimes even more qualified than my male colleagues. And I think we need to push back on that. We cannot do it alone as women, and that is where I keep saying, this move to close the gender gap is not a woman's thing. It's something that we need to do in allyship. We need to do it with men. So it's not a fight, but it is, hey, we need your help to change the cultures around us. And some of it is very subtle. and I say men, but part of my experience has been a lack of confidence from even female leaders. Female leaders also perceive that men are stronger in STEM fields and are more capable. So it is a matter of breaking down these biases, some of them we're not even conscious of, and being able to embrace the capabilities of women. I had an intern at some point working with, and I remember her being brought to tears, and she spoke about fresh graduate out of university, and she decided to wear lovely bright red lipstick to work, like what Eduarda is wearing, that I've already asked her for, you know, the name, so I could buy that. And she was told by her male boss, what are you doing? Nobody will take you seriously as an engineer if you're going to be wearing lipstick. And I mean, this is 2 years ago. And so, you know, these biases do exist, and my journey has not been easy. I think I come from a place where many odds were against me. By the way, I'm from small island of St. Lucia, fastest woman in the world, Julian Alfred, Olympic gold medal. Just throw that in. And the journey has not always been encouraging, and at some point it feels like maybe I shouldn't be here. And I do hope that any action, just me personally, but me being part of an organization where you've just started looking at gender, and I'm encouraging you as much as you can change that, please do. The world, our future depends on it. Once again, thank you so much for listening.
Oh wow, and that's why we invite Charlene to speak. She's wonderful. We had the pleasure of working together, and she did lead a program to support women with all of the solutions that she mentioned, which are vital. Thank you. But quickly, just to make a few highlights of your opening remarks, your keynote speech, Charlene. Oh my God, it's smart economics. We have the numbers, we have the data, we have the studies, and somehow organizations are still questioning the importance of having not just more women, but more diversity in every single position, especially leadership positions. You spoke about, role models, and I love telling this story that I have a friend in Brazil that runs an organization that trains young people in the energy sector, and they also ran a survey and asked them, what is your role model? 2/3 of the respondents said Elon Musk or nothing. They don't know anyone in the energy sector, let alone women in the energy sector. So the importance of giving visibility, providing the soft skills, as you mentioned, so much that there is in our career advancement is related to salary negotiation, speaking opportunities, visibility, networking, and our male allies are so important in this way for opening doors. I've had some incredible male mentors, but they have to acknowledge that there is a gap. And I always task people with looking at the room and asking yourselves, who's missing here? So without further ado, I would love to introduce you to our wonderful panel today. And I think you can know it. So today we have Jaqueline Conrado, Brazil Country Manager at United Airlines. We have Janice Wexler, VP at Water. We have Aniela Arantes, who is the VP Global Technology at JP Morgan Chase. And we also have Suelma Rosa, who's VP Corporate Affairs at PepsiCo. Maybe then, Jacqueline, I'll start with you, and you will see that I'll do 2 rounds of questions. One that is very personal and how their journey started and why they got to their positions, because they're all incredible in their own ways and they got here for a reason, so any words of advice are very welcome. And the second round is more related to their organizations and what they're doing in general to support in the private sector women in STEM and increase diversity. So Jacqueline, can you share with us a little bit more of your career trajectory and what led you to United Airlines?
Of course. So first of all, thank you, Eduarda, and it's so great to see this event actually materialize, because we were talking about it in Person of the Year earlier in May here in New York. So thanks to you, Eduarda, this event is happening. So thank you. I also want to thank Simone. She's such an important reference for women in STEM, but I would say beyond that, for all of us. So thank you so much for leading the way, not only in our sector, but beyond so many industries and here in the chamber. And I also want to thank Will, because we need allies, right? So I'm really happy that this is an important matter for Will as well, and his commitment is also one of the reasons why we are here. So thank you, Will. So it's very difficult always to talk about ourselves. But I'm Jaque. I'm Jaque in Brazil, born and raised in São Paulo. I am a middle child of a family of 3. I am the first generation of my family to go to university, and I think my mom, she could only study until 4th grade, and my father could only go to school until the 7th grade. And it's not normal that parents solve their frustration in their children successfully, but in my case they did. Because their dreams was, my father's dream was to be an engineer, my mom's dream was to be a controller working in finance, but they couldn't because they need to work. And so, as I said, I think they solved their frustration really well with me and my siblings, focusing on education. And I would say that that's why I'm here, because of their focus and their commitment. And I think that's what primarily led me here. And I started my career 21 years ago. I started working, I have a background in marketing, advertising, so I'm going to talk later in STEM, because I am today in STEM. But my background is marketing. That's what when I started in aviation, in a South American carrier, when aviation was actually starting to develop itself in Brazil. So it's not only about this elite tier of customers who were able to travel. This airline was actually making available for everyone to travel, replacing the bus travel for aviation. So that was a key moment in our industry, and I would say in our country. So I was there for a while. I worked in other sectors such as energy, such as consumer goods, and then I joined United 8 years ago in marketing as well, in a marketing role. And then my career took a turning point when 6 years ago I was asked to take on this role that I'm currently in today. So I think that we share several challenges that the other industries in STEM have, and I think that better that we partner together to overcome a challenge that we all have. And as you said, Eduardo, and I think Simone and Charlene also mentioned that the proof is in the pudding, is on the data. So I don't have, let's say, the usual profile to fit in, to be in this role that I have. And that's, in my view, an advantage for that. So normally people that take on this role that I'm in today, they have been in a company for 20 years, they have worked in pricing, revenue management, they have been in commercial, and I was for 2 years for the company and was invited to do that, exactly to bring innovation and advance our business in Brazil. And I took on this role in 2019, a year before the pandemic, but that's a conversation for another time. And in the last years that I've been on this role, United has the best performance results ever since our operation in Brazil for the last 32 years. And this is not about me, it's not about Jackie. It's about having someone in decision-making positions with a diverse background, adding a different perspectives and seeing opportunities and making changes in our business. So that's why I think it's important not only for our company to have important action being taken, and I think action is super key, because I believe that we have been discussing and talking about it, diversity and gender equality for quite some time, but while the conversation is very important and is very key, it's why we are here, the conversation is not proportional to the changes being made. So the needle is being moved very little. And I think that's a call to action, to take action.
I love that. I love that. No, absolutely, and thanks for commenting on the importance of diverse backgrounds, because I think we have a diverse panel as well, because these topics are needed not just for STEM careers, but in general in every single sector and subsector. And that's why we have such diverse representatives here, but from diverse organizations also who are paving the way for more gender equality. But moving on to you, Suelma, so I know that you are personally committed to diversity and inclusion. How did you get to where you are today, and what are you doing to advance careers of underrepresented individuals in your role?
Wow, so glad to be with you here today. I'm sorry, I have a British accent. I'm going to correct that soon. Probably this us being here is the reason I first engaged with diversity and inclusion. I am from the small island in Brazil, São Luís. I hope you have had the opportunity to get to know it. And when you are from São Luís, you are actually a really happy person because you have the beach, all day long, you keep eating, seafoods and fish, but you're also very far from the world, very far from the world. And the first time I saw the world, it was also the first time I noticed that I was different. You never know how one perceives you until they tell you you are different, right? So it was only by having this amazing journey my family has provided me, going through the world, learning languages, living different places, and realizing that I was from Northeast Brazil, the least developed state in the country, a woman. So I was against all odds, and yet very privileged. And so that's what made me understand that actually this is something that needed action. So I've been everywhere, I've done everything, I've wrote books about it, but what I'm very proud of is that everywhere I step in, it doesn't matter if it was at the academia. I have a very strong academic background. I love teaching, and I think being a professor is the best part of me, actually. But also stepping into new roles and bringing this conversation to the table. Charlene, you brought me so many insights, but one that I realized is that we have the data from the company that women are not promoting women. And this is big responsibilities, because what is that? We are being the first one in the role and not bringing anyone along. I don't want to be the last if I had to be the first one. And I don't want to be alone. It is amazing how much it impacted me, knowing that in my leadership role, I have come from a terrible experience being director of the Arab Chamber of Commerce back in Brazil, and being the first and only female leader and the youngest at the board, to what I have now, which has the most comfortable place I've ever been, the executive board at Latin level for PepsiCo is led by a woman, Paula Santilli, who was incredible, and it's the reason I joined the company. But it's not only that, we are 65% of the board. My colleagues are so comfortable to be with. We speak about nail colors before starting the meetings, and I have realized that how much it was important to be included, and I couldn't understand it perfectly until I had that. So that's the reason, and that's the journey together along with all of you. But I think every time we step in the room and the room doesn't have enough representation, it's our job to take action. As we don't have enough men here, we also don't have enough representation from descendants, for instance. And particularly in Brazil, that's really important. So as long as I'm here, as long as I am heard, I'm gonna be the one leading the way and pushing and challenging the environment to make sure that we are progressing in a society.
Thank you so much, Sonia, for your contribution. And Yael, I think you're going to be next. Go here so I can see you. Yes, you're an engineer yourself, a woman in STEM, and you've lived in several countries. Through your journey, how can you walk us through the barriers that you faced and what you've done to overcome them? I absolutely love technology and all the challenges that it comes with. I grew up in Brazil, in São Paulo. Kind of similar to your story as well. Actually, my mom was the first in her family to have graduation. She had 15 siblings, and that was a massive achievement. She learned English by herself, and she made sure I learned English since I was a kid, which made an enormous difference in my life. She was able to expose me to things that otherwise I wouldn't, because everybody I grew up with, all my friends and colleagues at school, they were not exposed to the same things, and very quickly I was different because of the way I was thinking. I did felt segregated because of that, but my family would say I'm very stubborn. I would say I'm determined, but I wanted to work in IT. I was always thinking of things. When I was 10, I was building computers, and when I was in school, I wanted so badly to work in the IT space that I finally convinced the director of the school to allow me to go work in the IT lab. But I was always the only woman in the room. I was the only woman in the room in the lab. I was the only woman in the room when I decided to do game design. We were at 75. We started with 4 women and we finished with just me. It's hard to be surrounded by a large group of men where they expect you to act like them. So I think for most of my life, that's what I did. I just put my head down and I tried to fight whatever came my way to get to what I wanted. I would say even my father wasn't very believing that I would do game design or later on computer engineering. But today he's very proud of that. But he was the one telling me, like, I'm sure you don't want to do something easier. Right? And I was like so stubborn that I just made it true. Knowing English was easy. I at first worked in the animation industry. I loved that job. But at some point, I came actually traveling to the United States. I came to SIGGRAPH, it's a computer graphics conference. I met a variety of tech leaders of companies I admired, and the suggestion I got was you need to have an engineering degree to be able to move countries or to join us. So I graduated in computer engineering, and in this process, instead of going to the animation industry path I wanted, I joined JP Morgan as an intern. Both of my parents worked in the banking industry their entire lives, and for me it was something that I would never do. But once I joined it, after having like more than 10 years of experience in a completely different industry, I absolutely loved it. It's funny because the first day I joined, my manager took me to a women's network event, and I realized that I never really thought about that. So for a majority of my life, I just fought it. I just realized that was what it was. That was my reality. I never looked sideways, looking for someone to help me, or I never had the role models that I could aim to be. I just didn't mind like being the first, but it wasn't easy. And after that realization, I started not looking just up, but around, and trying to figure out how I could do something better for those that are coming still. Like for those that are in high school or in their college, and how we could potentially help to make that not so hard.
Today I am part of Women in the Moving Tech in the firm. I am one of the leaders of the program, and it's actually great to see and participate on a variety of programs like Girls Who Code, and we have Tech for Social Good. There's a variety of programs that are amazing in the company. So in this journey of mine, like yes, I moved from Brazil to Argentina, and then I'm here in the US. I moved to Argentina not knowing how to speak Spanish, and I very quickly realized I needed that. So I ended up learning Spanish. I'm asked a lot about courage. Like, you had the courage to do this, you had the courage to do that. In my head, there was not an option. That's what I wanted, and that's what I had to do to pursue what I wanted. Moving countries, it was an added layer to that. But every single different group I was exposed to, different country I was exposed to, that just added to my knowledge, but also to my perception of what the world is. Unfortunately, in Brazil, the mindset is still very narrow in terms of enabling women across the company. Of course, in the metropolis, you're going to see a more open space. But when you go to small cities and when you talk with women, they are trying to pursue STEM in small cities, that is still pervasive. That to Charlene's comment before, that the parents kind of set them up to do a specific career because either is what they see their kids will succeed on, but maybe because of the stereotype that women do not belong in these areas because they are mainly male dominated, and I think not all women feel comfortable stepping into that space. Not just because it's hard, but how do I phrase that? Because you need to fight it all the time, and it's exhausting, right? So some girls don't want to go through it. So I really hope that events like this and events that organizations create and all of these programs really change the mindset of everybody actually, not just in Brazil and America, but like that it helps change the mindset of how women can fit in society in a way that is not a struggle.
Yes, no, absolutely. And it's so interesting you're saying that. I very much admire how determined you are to be the first one to open doors, because it's very hard. We're all exhausted all the time. And it saddens me how often I receive messages on LinkedIn, on WhatsApp, people connecting me to girls that are a few years younger than I am, that want to study abroad or that saw that I received the fellowship, and they ask me like, oh, how did you do it? Yeah, I will never be able to do it. Okay, it's too hard. They don't even try because they think they're already going to fail. So it goes back to that point of the applying for a job, that men just go for it, and women, they just find ways of self-criticizing and just not pursuing the career that they dream. So I think we need role models, and I think we need more women to dream. But all right, so I'll move on to you then, Janice. And I saw Janice speak in DC a while back. She's wonderful, and her story really captivated me. And you'll see that, you know, not just in our industries in STEM, but also coming from the visual arts, like Janice is. She also has faced a number of barriers. So Janice, please tell us more about your story.
Hi. Hello. So, yeah, I mean, as you can tell, I don't work in STEM. My kids last night, I was talking, my husband and I were talking about our day, and I was like, oh, I could do this thing at the Brazilian Chamber of Commerce about STEM. And my son, who's 14, was like, you're not Brazilian. He's like, you don't work in STEM. What are you doing? And my daughter, who's 10 was like, yeah, but she's a boss. So like, I'm winning 50% of the time, but not really winning 50%. So, you know, I think, but you know, I made me think about sort of what my point of view would be here today, because I don't work in STEM. I'm going to say that like 7 more times. But my parents were both doctors. They were immigrants, and they kind of gave me two choices as I was growing up. They were like, you can be a doctor or a lawyer. That's it. And I tried. I think if you asked me when I was 9, I mean, I was just like, I was like, what do you want to be? I'm a pediatrician. You know, and I'd look at my parents, they would smile, I would smile, and I tried to sort of like, I was good at math. I was actually sort of the opposite when I think Charlene was saying there's some men who are like bad at math but really good at art. Sorry, Simone. But I was good at math. I enjoyed math. I sort of like exhibited all those left brain qualities. I was very methodical. I was obsessive. I was a perfectionist. But there was this part of me that just like, you know, like my grandmother would make me pray every night, and I thought praying was wishing, and so I'd like wish for, I wasn't wishing for a stethoscope, I was wishing for a rainbow bright bell. And I was like, I love color, I love shiny things, I was like a raccoon, and my parents, I think I did it, you know, I went, they were like, my mom was like, you're gonna go to Brown, you're gonna go to med school, you're gonna be a doctor, and we're gonna throw everything we have into this whole operation. And so, but there was something, and I think that is important, is sort of what I tell my kids, and what I started to talk about at Vital Voices, is I think this psyche you're in, you know, like the thing inside you that drives you and what you value, and I think that to me is more, you know, what I try to tell my daughter, who, by the way, you ask her what she wants to be, she's like, I want to be a mother. So, she's like, I want 1 million kids. So, you know, I think that there was something inside me that was driving me away from that path. Who knows? I think if like biology books had beautifully like neon color drawings, my whole future would have been different. But it just didn't speak to me. And when I was in college, I didn't go to Brown. I got into Brown, and that's not to brag. It's just that's how much I couldn't get on that ride, you know. And I took many left turns through my career. Where I am now, like I got off that speed train many times. I was a bartender for several years. And there have been these moments where my psyche just kind of came up and slapped me in the face and was like, wake up, you're on the wrong path. And I was in college, and I remember the first time I saw this painting called Broadway Boogie Woogie by Mondrian. It's just like, I was there with my boyfriend, we were staring at it, and it just hit me like so hard, you know, like the colors, and I didn't even really know what I was looking at, but I was just so floored, and I was a history major at the time, so I've been all over the place. And I was like, wow, my boyfriend was like, it looks like a board game, like I don't know what's, you know, but it was something inside me that stirred, and so then I started to study art history, and then that led me to this job at the New Yorker in the art department, where everyone was much smarter than me. But, you know, like I enjoyed the graphic side of it, and I discovered graphic design, and that was really important. It was like everything spoke to me, but then I got off again. I took another left turn, and I bartended for a couple of years because I was tired of being poor. And so there were several moments in that time that sort of again, like in these quiet moments, whether you're jogging or doing something, and you know, I always tell people, find time to stare at the wall, or find time to just go to the museum, even if you don't like art, because it's so quiet, and just stare at a painting, and these things will start to rise up, and it could just be like, gee, I feel sad about something, or this is not, you know, and like, I do think it's this idea of authenticity. There's who you are when you were born, and those things I don't think really ever change. And so it started to boil up in me, and I was like, I gotta go back to school. So I went and I got an associate's degree in graphic design, and then I got my first job, and I still took a few left turns, but it is why I am where I am, and I've been put in many situations, and sort of, you know, my parents were like, I don't know how you're gonna make a living, you know, studying history, number one. but then also like working in the art world, and I think that it was just like I can put in these situations with, and also by the way, like being in the creative world, you really see how men and women work differently. You know, there's sort of like, creativity is so subjective, and so there really, unfortunately, there's no numbers to go by except for when people focus test your work and tell you it's not working. But I've been put in sort of like rooms in sort of corporate environments where, as a leader, you know, someone will tell you, I've had bosses tell me, like, go in that room and be this person. And that, I think, never worked for me, because I'm kind of like, it's been a struggle for me to sort of come, to be on this panel is a journey. I was not a public speaker, but I knew my stuff. I knew my stuff inside out. I knew what I liked. I knew why I was pitching a certain idea. And so all that stuff was inside me, but the outside stuff, the stuff that they sort of tell you, like, check these boxes, be loud, be in the spotlight, grab the room, that's just not how I operate. So I went in, but I made sure I knew my stuff, and I followed my own path, and it worked. Because I think that if you make sense, number one, I think if you can walk into a room and say something that you believe in, but also comes from a place of authenticity, but then you can really deliver that message, and then, again, numbers don't lie, but also, like, if you're saying something that makes sense, it resonates and people sort of identify with it. And so I think that was sort of an important learning for me in my journey. And then education. I think that's one thing my parents, even though they told me I would never make any money, they always supported me with education. So they're like, okay, well, if you're gonna do that, try to go to the best place and get a degree. So I think that my best piece of advice would be, I think find time to stare at the wall, find time to, listen, sort of find a moment where you're not distracted by everything, and be in the moment, and these things will come up, and you will find a core, sort of what you value, what's important to you, and then take that to the workplace, because that's true, that's authentic, that's powerful, and it's, I think it's something that people will listen to. And then the other piece of advice, I think, is just, and it's something that Estee Lauder is passionate about, is there's not one way to lead. And that's an important part of Emerging Leaders Fund, which is a program that we started, and we partner with different, like Vital Voices, is there's not one way to lead, and you will see that in corporate America, and I'm sure like JP Morgan and Pepsi, there you see kind of like the men up there or leaders up there, but there really are different ways to lead, and I think you just have to envision yourself up there. Not if you were that person, but what would you be like if you were up there?
See, Janice, this is why I invited you. You're a beautiful speaker, and again, you might not be considering yourself in STEM now, but as we've seen here, sometimes life takes us to a different direction. I wasn't a person in STEM until 5 years ago. I didn't think that this was my career path either. So we never know, and I think your journey is so inspiring. So I'm going to now do a second round, more focused on the solutions. We heard some of the barriers, we know they exist, we know the numbers, but these organizations that you see here today are all working to find some progress in this space. So maybe we'll start with, again, we'll do from here to there, and Jacqueline, if you can speak more about how United Airlines is changing the game. We already know of the Person of the Year fellowship, but you told us wonderful things in the call that we had. Our preparatory call. Yes. So if you please can share with the audience, I think you're doing wonderful work.
So I think in the aviation industry is interesting when it comes to gender, because the face of the aviation industry is actually a women's face, which is the flight attendants, right? So until this day, when I'm in a room and someone asks me, what do you work for? What do you do for a living? Like, I work in aviation. They're like, you're a flight attendant, right? So, and with all the respect, it's a super hard job. I could never be a flight attendant. I have no motor skills. I'm super clumsy. I almost fall off the chair, so I will never be successful as a flight attendant. But there are other things that I can do for the industry. And I think, and I'll speak a little bit about what we're doing globally that is being led here in the US and what we're doing in Brazil. So we have a business need for the upcoming years, which is in the next, and I'm just talking about the US perspective, but in the next 10 years, it's going to be required for our business, our industry that is growing, we're going to need 10,000 pilots. And today, there are 6,000 who are qualified to do the job. So there's a clear gap there that we need to fill. And so we are in a strong growing mode at United. We are now, I'm not sure if everyone knows, but United now, it is the largest carrier in the world today. And we are continuing to grow our investments and our footprint worldwide. So we need pilots. So we have created, we are the only major carrier that has created a pilot program, an aviation academy, to develop new pilots. And what I love so much about this project is that we also want to change the face of the pilots today, right? So today, and the whole one of the biggest purposes of this new academy is to bring more opportunities to women and people of color. So and that is going and is doing very successfully. But taking a step back, but before you wish to be a pilot, you need to know that you can be a pilot, right? You need to have references, and you need to know that besides it's a wonderful thing to be a flight attendant, but there's so much more that you can do in the aviation industry. So in Brazil, we brought a program that United operates worldwide, but a program that's called Girls in Aviation. And the goal of the program is to show women that there's so many paths that you can take in the aviation industry. You can lead the country, the station in my case, or you can be an engineer in the tech ops center, or you can be working the ramp, or you can be a customer service engineer, you can work in technology. So the whole purpose is we spend a day with these girls, not only girls from 12 years old to 20 years old. We have partnered in Brazil with a very important organization called Vozes das Periferias. So we bring women from challenging backgrounds to actually come up, and we want to show them. So they spend a day with us in the operation. So the last 2 years we've done in GROW, in Guarulhos, and this year we're going to do in GIG, in Rio, where we have a tech ops center there. So, and what it's so interesting because we spent a day with them showing and talking to our team, this is what the customer service agent does, and this is what you need to do to work with them. So they interact with everyone, and we are lucky to have hired, to have worked with us, 2 of those girls who were there with us, and now 2 of them have worked for United, and now we're just going to have the 3rd edition, and it is such an important program because how people are going to dream about working with aviation if they never see an airplane in person. And a lot of the girls actually, they lived in the Guarulhos area, but they have never entered the airport. So when to me, that program is so powerful because it enables people to dream. And I think that's, I think it's a privilege, but also a responsibility that we have in the industry, right? We need talent. I just gave an example, and we need diverse talent, as I just said. So to build that bridge and to be in this girl's background, that is amazing industry to work for. It is challenging, but it is an amazing industry to work for. I think those things are so powerful because I was just talking about how I'm the first generation to go to college, and my parents, they have never left Brazil until I got to United. And now my parents that went only to the 4th grade and the 7th grade, they spent the holidays in New York last year. So, and the reason why I bring that up is because making those opportunities intentionally, you change the lives not only of the individual, but you change their surroundings, people around that. So this is a program, again, one of the programs that we have that we are super proud and we are happy to continue to grow. And about the previous remark that I made initially about taking action, it's the conversations and the discussions, and especially amongst ourselves women, it's so important because it is hard, and I think Aniele made an amazing point, it is very hard to navigate, still. Well, we are here, but it's hard to navigate that. But I think that's the corporations, the companies itself, we need to walk the talk, and I think that's one of the programs that we are super proud to close that gap, take action, and continue to, and again, it's not only about doing the right thing, it is good for our business. It is the right thing to do for our business. If we want to be profitable, if we want to grow revenue, we need to look like our customers. And that comes inside out.
Oh, I love that. Just being honest here, wow, this is very impressive. Thank you for the work you're doing and for being a role model yourself. Well, Swelma, you've worked many years at Unilever and then you moved to PepsiCo. So my question to you is more focused on what do you think is the recipe for success? You've seen a lot of, DEI programs being implemented. From your trajectory, what do you think works the best that maybe the audience here could implement or bring to their workplace?
Wow, that's a big question. I would say enjoy the ride. I never ever target a position or leadership position. It was never about this. It was always about learning something else. It was always about curiosity, trying to understand how things work. I'm so proud. I've learned a lot at Unilever. And coming from Unilever and joining PepsiCo, especially under Paulus and Tilly's leadership, and I cannot emphasize enough the reason I decided to join the organization. It's of course because of this amazing work PepsiCo do all across the globe, but because of her. And because of her means so much to me. I mean, it means that I have someone to stand up to, to look up to. I have this reference, which is a 60 years old lady who has been leading the business transformation for 5 years, who has led two-district growths for 5 years in the region, who took 5 years to have 65% of women leadership on senior leadership, but not only that, to have 60% of women in R&D, to have 50% of women in leadership and IT, to have the very first female leading the supply chain end-to-end Latam, Mirna Macias, you all should know her. I mean, beyond doing all she does it in high heels and really, really gorgeous look outfit. So it is never about what is the position. I don't believe in all this. I am certainly not a VP. I'm Swelma before all things. And Jack can vouch for that because she met Swelma before VP. And many friends that I have here. So it's not about positions. It's about what do you do with the opportunities you have. And this is an incredible moment. Look at me, I'm here in New York. So it is an incredible moment, but there's so much else to learn. Certainly, I would love to learn how to program. And I'm gonna do this in this life. I'm actually learning Python.
Whoa.
For no reason, just for learning maybe Danielle can mentor me throughout. But that's all about it. I mean, it's about enjoying the journey. It's about making sure that you impact other lives. It's about making sure that we leave the world better than we find, no matter how big changes or small changes, we have power to do. That's about that.
Thank you for sharing that, especially because I want everyone here to leave with a little bit of a reflection and try to bring these words to your everyday work. Because gender is about also mainstreaming, right? It's not about treating it as a one specific sector in your organizations, but it's also looking at how it's a cross-cutting issue that should be present in everything you do, no matter the industry. But moving on to you, Aniela. So what are some actions you see organizations taking that directly contributed to your career growth and could benefit other women in STEM?
I think we talk a lot about mentorship. So when I think back, even when I was a kid, I always had a sort of sponsor. And the difference between the mentor and the sponsor is the sponsor take actions. It's an active role. So in school, I had a professor that was always pushing me to do better, to do more, because he believed in me, even when I didn't, right? Even when I joined JP Morgan, I had this senior leader who once came to me and told me, you should move to another country. And I'm like, fine, here. No, you should go. It was very funny because the first time this happened, it was the move for Argentina, and the senior country manager walked to me and said, like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm looking for a job somewhere else in the world. Why? I was like, I just want to try something different. Why don't you go to Argentina? Don't speak Spanish? I was like, okay, repeat after me. I'm like, okay. He's like, dame una cerveza. Dame una cerveza. Perfect. You're good to go. You can speak Spanish. Don't worry about Spanish. We will give you a course on Spanish. You will learn Spanish, right? We need talent like you. In Argentina, we're opening a hub there. Go. You're going to succeed there. And I'm like, okay. So, and that happened again when I moved to New York. Actually, I was very happy in my team in Argentina. And then another senior leader walked to me and said, like, you should move. And I'm like, what? Again? And he said, like, I'm pretty sure your skills would generate a lot more impact if you were in another country. And I'm, okay. So he actually made me meet more than 15 people, random roles all across the company, just for me to understand what were the other opportunities in the company. And eventually I found one that talked to me, that made me feel comfortable and that had a match with my passions. So here I am, not because I imagined and planned for it, but someone actively had a very honest conversation with me and opened my eyes to things I wouldn't even imagine. I wouldn't just decide to do that by myself. I was like very, very happy in the role it was, but I didn't know there was something else that I could do that I would also be happy with, right? So all of the things that we're talking about, like having a dedicated program to uplift women is very, very important. But something that I realized thinking like back in my life, through my entire life, there was always a sponsor. Even when I didn't know what that word meant, there was always a sponsor, there was always something, even if it was a friend, that helped me rationalize where I am and where I can be. And I think the most important part is that trusted in me and supported me even when I didn't fully believe that that was possible. So events like this are amazing. Like I just met some brilliant women here. I think this network is amazing. We get to connect and share these experiences, having the opportunity to talk to other women about the challenges we have. is so important. I had a mentee who one day walked to me and said like, I don't know if I can have children. And I'm like, why would you think about that? Oh, because of work. It's like, why do you think work would prevent you from having children? I don't have children, so let me connect you with a whole bunch of people. Women, successful women that have children and had their children throughout their career, right? So it's just that sparkle, that initial conversation that is very important, but that active role of someone, a sponsor, is crazy important. So we do have sponsorship programs in the firm, and I think this is something that should be spread across a variety of organizations. This impacted me immensely, and another thing that I think about a lot is going back to that phase in my life where being in a class was so hard for me because I had no reference. So going back to those young kids and saying, that's okay, and if you need someone to talk, here I am. There's a group of women who code here. There's a group of women who code there. Find your community, find other people that you can just exchange experiences with. And you can actually create like friendship for life. So I am just blessed to be where I am. I love working at JP Morgan because I found an environment where I don't need to prove myself first. Right? They believe in the potential that you have and they allow you to try your most crazy ideas. And here I am leading emerging technologies, looking at like virtual reality and a variety of other very interesting things. But I think feeling that you're in a safe space, that you're comfortable to try, that you're listened to is very important. So that culture and that sponsorship, I think, is key for us to change and balance a little bit more the experiences we have throughout our lives.
Thank you so much, and I completely agree with you. Sponsors, I've had so many sponsors, mentors, supporters, and we all know that we wouldn't be here without them. So I hope we're all also supporting other people to be in these spaces because they're very hard to get to, especially spaces like this in another country for most of us. And I think the final question now before we end the panel. So Janice, you started talking about the program, the Emerging Leaders Fund, but I know Janice through Vital Voices, which is this wonderful program that supports women and their leadership journeys. So for all of you, all ages, take a look. They have some incredible programs. And so yeah, I wanted to hear more details about, Estée Lauder's work, because sometimes we have to acknowledge, the same with like the POI program, that funding is necessary, and funding to support scholarships to get to this entry-level positions that we're talking about is pivotal for getting more women into STEM. So would love to hear some maybe even final remarks from you, Janice.
Yeah, I think that Estée Lauder as a company, Estée Lauder companies, their platform has always been breast cancer for corporate social responsibility. And that's very important to the company, but I think something that's really in the brand DNA to Estée Lauder, the brand, is as a female-founded company, is this idea of, women's empowerment, women's leadership, and I think the key part of that is education and experience. Giving women the opportunity to experience what it's like to sort of be a leader or to, pursue something that you love. And the amazing, so the company started Emerging Leaders, Estée Lauder's Emerging Leaders Fund, ELELF. And the purpose is to really help women envision themselves as leaders. And I think, and also like authentic leaders. So we partner with Vital Voices, and we are doing grant programs with women from over 60 countries. We've reached over 400 women, and to bring them together, but also I've met a lot of these women. I think I met two groups of them through Vital Voices, and they vary from women who have started their own companies, small, big companies, women like us who are in leadership positions, and they bring them together and help them sort of, with these workshops. They do like 7-week workshops with these group of women who, speak to people like us, but then also like really hands-on workshops on how to communicate, how to build your brand, down to like your logo, and then also how to approach just sort of like adversity within the work environment. So it really is, it's a very practical program, but it's also sort of to help women understand that a leader doesn't come in one package. There's many different kinds, and so they work really hard to sort of bring together a wide variety of women from a wide variety, geographically, all over the place. And so that's something that's only about 2.5 years old right now, but it's going to become bigger and bigger, and there's a huge funding part of it, which is very important because we will eventually, as a company, be granting, there will be getting, I think, a certain amount of these women will get grants a year so that they can pursue their company, their purpose, whether it's their company or a program that they want to begin. So, but in addition, we do this program, Code with Claus. We don't do the book. So we have a brand ambassador, Carly Claus, who is a model, but she's also, she is a avid coder. And so she has this program, Code with Flossie, and we partner with her on that program where she brings together young women from inner city or low-income neighborhoods where they don't have as much opportunity to pursue STEM, and she takes them to a camp where they code their brains out, and it's amazing. And I get to sit on a judging panel where they come at the end of this long program and they present their ideas, and usually it's, how would you redesign the website, or how would you recode sort of the interactivity of, this is me trying to fill out the language because I don't understand it, but they're young, they're so young, they come from, I think it's 13 to 18, and it's incredible. These are women who code, and so these are not people who are like in a room pitching ideas or getting up on, even in art school, you're meant to get up and defend your work all the time. They're so smart, it's incredibly inspirational, and they're 14 and they are presenting their work to, in their minds, the vice president of creative, and it floors me every time. I go home and I'm like, I tell my kids, you suck. And these girls are amazing, and so it's really inspirational, and the winner gets to, I think they pick a winner, they're all winners, they're all amazing, and it's really inspirational, and I hope my daughter will get into coding. So far she wants to be a mom. Sorry, I think I answered the question.
No, absolutely, you definitely did, and I think it's funny because I think that at this age is when you spark the interest in children and teenagers to start pursuing careers in areas that they thought they couldn't. So it's just very important work of all of you. So maybe I'll do just a quick conclusion here. We talked about a lot of things today, some solutions, some barriers, from the need for role models, the need for supportive ecosystems and allies, the role of men especially, sponsors, funding, and thinking about diverse backgrounds to leadership. It's very hard to get to leadership positions depending on where you work, depending on the sector, and we have to help each other most of the time. I also found, just to close on this note, I don't want to be pessimistic, but just to show that the road is still ahead, which is that according to UN Women, it's going to take us 286 years for gender equality. So I'm laughing out of being nervous, but hopefully, all of us here together can try to move the needle and bring these conversations to our everyday lives, not just in the workplace, but also in our families, schools, talking to children about this. It's important to be a present topic in our daily lives. With that, I want to thank the panelists, our keynote speaker and opening remarks, the incredible women, and all of you that attended and see this topic as something important for you. And maybe a round of applause to all of our speakers today. Take a picture of the speaker, if that's possible, and then I'll give you time to interact with these wonderful women.